Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. Today, I'm going solo, and I want to share with you one of the greatest threats to national security, not just Israel's national security, where I am, but really on a global safety and security level. Nuclear weapons, mass shootings, jihadist armies infiltrating our borders, well, those are all really, really bad. But there's something else that you may not know about. And I'll tell you what the problem is. I'll give you three primary ways this problem manifests itself, and then potentially the beginning of a solution to work all of this out. And let me start really with the story. And this is a story that is told by Aaron Zellin, senior fellow from the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, in his testimony to the U.S. House Committee on Homeland Security just last week. I'll quote for you his exact words, and for those of you following this briefing on Zoom, I'll put a link to the testimony in the chat, and I'll throw it also down below in the YouTube description as well. And this is what he said. On New Year's Eve in New Orleans, Shamsuddin Jabbar was killed in a shootout with police after driving a Ford pickup truck with an Islamic State flag through a crowd on Bourbon Street, killing 14 and injuring 57. Prior to the attack, he visited New Orleans twice on October 31st and November 10th last year. During his October trip, he recorded a video of the French Quarter using smart glasses from Meta. Jabbar also expressed support for Islamic State in videos posted to Facebook, researched the December 2016 car attack at a Christmas market in Germany, and pledged allegiance to the group shortly before the attack. The following week, Islamic State wrote an editorial in its weekly newsletter, Al Naba, bearing the title, "We Were There," and gloating over Jabbar's attack. The editorial highlighted the group's influence and incitement capabilities. It also boasted that the perpetrator used American technology, referring to the Meta smart glasses he employed to conduct reconnaissance. The piece concluded by once again urging Muslims in Europe and the United States to carry out more terrorist attacks, highlighting how Islamic State uses one attack to push for a new one and creates a virtuous cycle from its perspective. This is why it is not surprising that Jabbar himself researched a prior Islamic State attack, the December 2016 Christmas market car ramming attack in Berlin that killed 12 and injured 48. Jabbar's attack also falls in line with the Islamic State instructional attack planning. In particular, in mid-November 2016, in an English-language Islamic State magazine called Rumiyah, the group released an article titled "Just Terror Tactics" that provided guidance on the best way to kill as many of the enemy as possible. Here are some of their suggestions. It advised that the type of vehicle most appropriate for such an operation is a large load-bearing truck, similar to Jabbar's pickup. It noted that if the attackers do not have sufficient wealth to buy such a vehicle, they can rent one instead. Jabbar did exactly that. It suggested specific targets, such as pedestrian congested streets. Jabbar followed suit. It suggested that an attacker can use a secondary weapon. In Jabbar's case, two coolers with explosive devices were placed at two other locations in the city's French Quarter. It told prospective attackers to find an appropriate way for announcing one's allegiance to the caliphate. And Jabbar did so not only with his pledge of allegiance on Facebook, but also by raising the Islamic State flag on the truck during the attack. That's all pretty scary stuff. And it shows the direct link between the online activity of terror groups and their success in recruitment and the execution of terror attacks. If you want to see the full testimony of Aaron Zellin to the U.S. House Committee on Homeland Security, you can check it out in the link that I am sharing right now. And you can really read in more detail how they recruit ordinary citizens to become these acts of terror. Now, online recruitment and radicalization is the method by which terror groups and terror states are both building their armies and fighting wars. We live in a modern world, and those terrorists, Those terror entities are highly sophisticated and using online platforms and technologies to advance their mission. Now, we know in places like Gaza, right now, Hamas uses cash incentives, food, and other supplies to incentivize new recruits to join their ranks. Stay committed and fight Israel. Hamas has the Gazan population in a chokehold, which is how they recruit. And moving forward, of course, this must change. But if you're a free citizen of the world, you live in the US or you live in Israel, that recruitment method does not quite work. You can't tell a US citizen in New Orleans or an Israeli in Tel Aviv, if you don't join my terror army, then your family will starve to death. But there are other things that you can do. And we see terrorist groups finding ways to reach and incentivize foreign actors and agents. I'll give you an example not too far from where I myself live in Beit Shemesh. This past summer, a 21-year-old Hasidic man living in Ramat Beit Shemesh was arrested by the Shin Bet for working for the Iranian intelligence agency, as reported in Ynet. His interrogation revealed that he received instructions over the Telegram app of a user named Anna Ilana and was directed to hang posters, hide money in various locations in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, deliver packages, including some containing decapitated stuffed animals and dolls, as well as threatening messages to be delivered along with a knife and placed at the doorsteps of Israeli homes. He was also told to set fire to wooded areas. The man agreed to all of the instructions but would not start the fires. He enlisted two more Israelis to carry out the missions in exchange for pay, which he received from his handlers in cryptocurrency. His two cohorts were released after an interrogation and are awaiting the prosecution's decision on whether to indict them. Again, this is a Hasidic man in Ramat Beit Shemesh. The indictment states that he was also asked to break a car window or set fire to a car during a demonstration and send a video to prove it. This Anna promised him $500 for every window he broke, $3,000 for every car he damaged. The defendant asked Anna whether he should go to demonstrations on the right or the left side of the political map. And Anna replied, it didn't matter. And we'll get back to this a little bit later. In addition, she suggested that he could break the glass of a store window during a demonstration in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, according to the indictment. Senior security officials told Ynet, and again, I'm quoting for you from the Ynet news source, senior security officials told Ynet that the ultra-Orthodox population has become a target for the Iranians. According to them, the ultra-Orthodox public is a target of the Iranians, especially because of the draft law and because the Iranians estimate that they are less aware of online dangers, that their loyalty to the state is only partial, and that they would be willing to commit security offenses for the sake of excitement or money. Wow. These are just two examples I've shared with you now of how people can be reached online to commit acts of terror. In the first case, Jabbar was incentivized by the ideology of the Islamic State and learned everything he needed to know from their online content. And in the second case, the Ramat Beit Shemesh man was activated by money and that did not even necessarily know who his employer was. Now, the use of the internet for recruitment dates back to the early 1990s, with websites built all the way back then by terror groups. Over the past 35 years, they have become far more aggressive and advanced. As countries and companies try to remove terror groups from their platforms, the groups remain one step ahead, learning the algorithms and moving to less regulated systems. Telegram, as noted, TikTok, Rocket Chat, for example, are platforms, among many others, where this content is alive and well, and you don't even need to dig so deep to find it. So far, we have seen how terror groups get foreign agents to execute terror attacks through online content and social media. This is one component of their online strategy, but there are two more components that I would like to share with you. So let's look at how Iran operates on these two additional fronts beyond finding, radicalizing, or paying foreign agents. Iran, by the way, is not just a threat in terms of their nuclear aspirations and all their proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah, but they are a huge cyber threat. They are, in fact, very advanced in this area and constantly waging attacks against Israel and the US as well. A few examples. In 2012, Iran launched one of the most devastating cyber attacks in history against Saudi Arabia's national oil company. The Shamoon malware attack erased data from 30,000 computers and nearly shut down the entire oil giant, forcing employees to manually process billions of dollars in transactions. For days, Saudi Arabia had to give away oil for free because digital operations had collapsed. In 2020, Iranian hackers attempted to poison Israel's water supply by infiltrating its water treatment systems. As we know, Israel is incredibly advanced in water treatment systems, and Iran sought to exploit that. Their goal, to increase chlorine levels in the water, potentially leading to mass poisoning. Thankfully, Israeli cyber defenses thwarted the attack, but the incident really did demonstrate Iran's willingness and ability to use cyber warfare as a lethal weapon. Let's make it a little more recent. It was reported that in 2024, Israel experienced a 43% increase in cyber attacks, many originating from Iran and Hezbollah. Between October 7th and December 31st, 2023, approximately 3,380 cyber attacks were reported, with around 800 having significant damage potential. You see that Iran is highly active in this space. Likewise, the Shin Bet uncovered that Iran attempted 200 cyber attacks targeting senior Israeli officials and public figures. These were phishing campaigns aimed at gathering personal data to facilitate large-scale assassinations within Israel. Now, this is all really bad and component two of the cyber strategy. But there is another way that they use cyber warfare. And this is now the third component and perhaps the most elusive and the most dangerous. They set up fake accounts and phony identities to build divisiveness and boost ideologies that advance their own agenda. Here are just three examples. There are many, many. So there are many good-hearted, strong Zionist Jews who are news junkies. We want to know what is happening. We want to have the inside scoop before it hits the mainstream media. And we want it from a source that we can trust. Well, guess what? Iran knows this and tries to exploit this. Anyone here ever sign up for the Aryeh Yehuda news flashes? Aryeh Yehuda sounds very religious. That could be the name of a Zionist lover of Israel living somewhere in Judea and Samaria. But I hope you didn't sign up for this, because this was an Iranian plot. The perpetrators created groups on multiple platforms such as WhatsApp, Telegram, and Facebook, posing as an extreme right-wing Israeli organization. Using these accounts, they spread inflammatory content against Arab Israeli citizens, mimicking the style of a radical right-wing news outlet. Additionally, they directed their efforts towards security forces and public figures, aiming to destabilize Israeli society and deepen divisions. The objective of this operation was to distribute propaganda and misinformation while masquerading as a local news update channel. Furthermore, they sought to incite violent demonstrations outside hospitals by disseminating false claims that terrorists were receiving treatment in medical facilities across Israel, thereby encouraging right-wingers, so to speak, to rush those hospitals, to wage protests, to seek out those terrorists. So I hope no one signed up for the Aryeh Yehuda news flashes. And by the way, there are other similar news sources which are still active and alive right now. I'm not sharing the names with you because no one should visit these sites prior to them being deactivated. I'll share another one with you. Second Israel. For over 2 years, this operation actively engaged in shaping Israeli public discourse. In 2021, it managed multiple social media accounts with seemingly conflicting agendas, some opposing religious influence, advocating for the separation of religious and state, some supporting LGBTQ rights, and some were posing as prominent rabbis to spread incitement against secular Chiloni people. They really ran the gamut of trying to build divisiveness within Israel. During the 2022 elections for the 25th Knesset, the group sought to manipulate political narratives. It targeted left-wing voters with anti-Ben Gvir messaging, portraying him as a threat to Israel. They also pushed claims of election fraud with Likud and right-wing supporters. They're going after both ends. You can see the goal is to incite dissent within Israeli society. After the outbreak of the war on October 7th, the operation sought to discredit Netanyahu, blaming him for October 7th attacks and spreading deepfake videos about him. One final example, the Bring Home Now campaign. Not bring them home, but they're very subtle about this. Bring home now. As the name suggests, it tries to mimic Bring Them Home. Its objective was to create a local presence aligned with the Hostage Family Forum while gathering personal data from Israelis. It directed individuals to sign up and volunteer, prompting them to submit their personal details. This group had agents on the ground in Israel, placing signs with its name at bus stops in Tel Aviv. Now, these are just three examples. If you compare these campaigns, they are in part espousing opposite ideologies. They pose to be part of the extreme right, they pose to be part of the extreme left, and some are in the middle and sound more benign, but they all serve the same purpose of penetrating Israeli society and causing social chaos and dissent. I've shared with you a lot right now. We could dive even deeper and deeper into all of this by exploring how Iran and other terror groups employ all three of these tactics, not just in Israel, but in the US and Canada. Again, what are these three tactics? They identify, recruit, and exploit foreign agents to commit acts of terror, like those first two examples I showed. They wage direct cyber attacks. And by the way, if you want to know about Iranian cyber attacks in the US, go look up the 2013 cyber attack when an Iranian group tried to gain control over the floodgates of the Bauman Avenue Dam in New York. And they tried to really cause a serious threat to life and property there. And then, of course, the third approach to cyber attacks, to this online form of terrorism, is the attempt to see dissent and disruption across society. These are the three ways that these terror groups operate to try to fight this war and promote their values and their ideologies against not only Israel, but the West. So how do we fight back? Well, ultimately, on a large scale, countries need to be informed, create their own programs to aggressively fight back. And this is absolutely happening. We need to push our leadership to fight back even stronger on all of these platforms. On a smaller scale, perhaps more relevant to the viewers of this briefing, what happened, I think, just now in Toronto is a great example of what can be done to fight back. For those of you who have been following the news out of Toronto, the Toronto Police Muslim liaison officers made statements during a recent official department podcast about the pro-Palestinian community and how October 7th brought people closer to Islam. Can you imagine that? October 7th has been a recruitment mechanism for Islam. And one of them was quoted as saying, when someone is calling a Palestinian rally a Hamas rally, then all of a sudden people start getting afraid and they think, oh, wow, these are people supporting an entity that's been labeled as a terrorist organization. This is what a Toronto police officer said. Entity that's been labeled. That's their view of Hamas. This was an official podcast. I thank my friends in Toronto for sharing the clips with me before it was taken down. The content was removed. And it's important that the content was removed because the way these social media algorithms work, if you watch one video, then the platform pushes another video on the similar topic and tries to engage you more and more and more. It's what the algorithms are built for. They want you on their platform to watch videos, become more engaged, buy products. But when it comes to terrorism, when it comes to these radical ideologies, that algorithm pushes people further down the rabbit hole of radicalization. And the next thing you know, you become a foreign agent of a terror group, doing their biddings, even if you don't realize it. That's all I have for you today. Our next briefing will be on Monday, not tomorrow. On Monday next week, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.